wealth is something that you can't see. The guy walking down the street could have ripped clothes and messy hair and whatever else,
Yeah.
and he might have millions and millions of dollars, whereas the person driving up in the Porsche with the big house, going on the big vacations, could be highly leveraged and not doing well financially. All you really see is the money they spent, which is the opposite of wealth. I just find that fascinating as well. I love educating people on it. I love having the deep conversations that I get to have with clients about it. I love helping them use their business as a vehicle to help them develop some freedom in their lives, to help them build wealth for their families.
We don't talk about this nearly enough. Billy Hofacker, owner of it, Total Body Boot Camp and Performance Center, and Your Money Fitness Coach, also has a podcast by the same name. He's going to talk to us today a little bit about personal finance, getting systems in place, making sure that you're doing more by doing less, with keeping up with the money that comes in and the money that comes out. Do more by doing less. With me, Charles Alexander, for small business owners, startups, and busy folks. I normally don't do a re-intro, but Billy here is the owner of Total Body Boot Camp and Performance Center, and he is your fitness money coach. These are two very different, distinct things. I love the fact that he says your fitness money coach, because I love, I'm your Charles Alexander and I stick your before everything. And I love both these industries primarily because anytime I try to teach somebody about doing more by doing less, I always borrow from fitness and from financial areas because it's so easy to understand. But dude, how did you give me the boot camp version of how did you end up doing both these things?
I mean, I have to go back. It's 2010, and I'm already in the fitness field, had been for over 10 years already at that point, and I'm getting ready for work. At this point, I'm living the dream. I'm married to the woman of my dreams, my
Yeah.
wife now, Melissa, and getting ready to go train some clients, help people with their health and fitness.
Yeah.
And I get a knock on the door. Surprised, I walk down the steps, open the door, and I see a big burly looking guy standing on my stoop. He's got bald head, tattoos all over his face, piercings
Ugh.
everywhere. Turns out to be the sweetest guy. But as I looked past him, I saw my brand new, not my Ferrari or Lamborghini, but my white Honda Accord
Oh,
was hooked up to his tow truck. My car had been repossessed. And when that happens, there's a strange feeling, a mix of guilt, shame, embarrassment, anger, all the things coming over me. It's not what my wife signed up for. And that was like the wake up call for us. It has a good ending, thankfully. We paid off all of our debt. We discovered we were $130,000 in non-mortgage debt at that point, and we knew we had one thing on our side: time. We were relatively young,
yeah.
so taking some different steps. And in 5 short years, we paid off $130,000
Woo.
of non-mortgage debt. I went on to continue to develop as a fitness business owner. I ended up with multiple locations in the Long Island area. Things went really well. People start asking me what I'm doing to run my business successfully. That led to doing some business coaching, which ultimately led to me finding my real passion and where those things intersected. Going back to your question, my background in fitness, not just my own fitness journey, but that in helping hundreds and hundreds of people improve their lives on the fitness side, and helping those people doing the same thing with their I found out that my scenario maybe unique in some ways, but not that unique. Lots of people are going through similar things at different
Mm-hmm.
levels with their finances. And most people who get into business, they don't necessarily have a background in business or finance. They just like the thing they do,
Right.
and they end up with all types of issues that are preventing them from reaching their full potential.
Let me be nosy then. It's 130K in non-home debt.
Correct.
How old were
Mhm.
you at that point?
I was right around I was the ripe young or ripe old age of about 30 years old. And I wish I was younger, of
Yeah.
course, but I'm still only 30. If those that are listening, of course, different ages, we all know that time has a way of sneaking up on us. I'm 44 now.
Sure.
I didn't think I ever thought I'd be this old, right? And all of a sudden we're here. and it's not old, but it has a weird way of just sneaking up on you. You can do dramatic things. We actually paid off almost $500,000 total up until this point, and that was about 14 years.
Man, what is it? And folks listening, this is do more by doing less, but a lot of that does involve finances, which I don't talk nearly enough about. We'll get to good old Dave here in a sec. What does 130K debt look like if it's not attached to a home?
Yeah, a lot of it was it almost. I mean, I know it's a big deal, but a lot of it was a loan with a family member. That was a big part of it. There was also a significant amount of credit card debt. There was a significant amount of student loan debt. I mean, I love her, but most of it was on my wife's side. But
Uh-huh.
we both had some student debt. She went to a private college for a little while. Thankfully,
Sure.
she didn't go longer than she did. I think she did like a year, 2 years, and the rest of it was like community college or public college. And then I went to a public college, but there was still some debt there. And there was medical bills. There was one of them was that was interesting was it was a loan with a guy who did some work on my house, and he decided that he would do the work and not charge me right then and there. He was trying to keep his
Oh,
workers busy.
sure.
He gave me a great deal, which ended up with me owing, I think that was like around $8,000. Yeah, it was like everything. I don't know if there was any types of debt that we didn't have at that point.
Which of, to be nosy, which of that debt was the most stressful? Which piece of it was?
Man, that's a good question, Charles.
Easy.
Man, I guess the loan with a family member is just always
Yeah,
awkward because you feel, the Bible talks about the borrower being a slave to the lender,
sure.
and that's real. And the family member was great about it. It wasn't really them that was making me feel a certain way. It was more of just I didn't really want that noose tied around me and
Hmm.
feeling like is it weird if I do this other thing while I owe this person money? And again, a lot of it was my own stuff. But yeah, that was one. That was actually the last one we paid off because it was the highest balance. We did follow the debt snowball.
Sure.
And yeah, it was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Maybe interestingly, when we made that last payment, it was a huge payment. It was thousands, that last payment. And it was a little bit of a letdown. It was on one end, it was like the most exciting thing in the world, but on the other end, it was like a total letdown. I was waiting for the balloons to come out and the bells to
Wanted a
go off.
ray of sunshine to fall from the heavens above.
Exactly. Then I went to the store or something like that, and I'm like, man, this is weird. Like this cashier like doesn't know like what just happened. Like, come on.
So I've often, and that, just to be clear, the reason I asked that, because I assumed that was going to be the answer. I have advised and advised and advised people that want to grow a business, add gas to it, or even start up. They always have some rich uncle or grandma or grandpa that really believes in them. Not mom and dad, because they're usually broke, but grandma and grandpa think you're just the best thing since sliced bread. And honey, you just take this 15, 20K, you just pay me back whenever. And what they really meant to say was, hey, starting next month at a 6% interest rate, which is very fair, but they never verbalized it. So you show up Easter Sunday and the cousins are in the kitchen talking about you and you don't know why. And
Mhm.
then, yeah, you feel guilty anytime you show up around them because you've got a new North Face jacket or your kid has a pretty baseball bat that you just purchased. And yeah, that might be step number one. I'm not anti you getting a little cash from family folks, but I'll write something down, scribble it out on paper, have some kind of talking points about the repayment plan. You talking about that? You've already mentioned the debt snowball and a few other things. I'm assuming lots of folks listening got a ton of financial advisors that are around, but I've been a big Dave Ramsey fan for umpteen years, a real number I made up, all the way back to the Money Game when he was just on the radio locally with Roy Matlock. That was forever ago. But you got to do something pretty special with Dave. What was that?
Well, one of the interesting things was I mentioned early on that we moved from New York. I was born in New York and I lived there for 43 years. And fun fact, I had never moved up to that point. I was born in that house. I bought the house for my parents when they retired in 2005. Met my wife, got married, started a family. And at this point, we have four children. And we decided a big part of it was economic. We decided to pick up and move the family 1,000 miles to Middle Tennessee, which is, I know
Woo.
where you are.
Yes, sir.
And part of that was through the Dave Ramsey organization, Ramsey Solutions, I had been pretty closely tied there. I was in their entree leadership program for years. We had drank all the Kool-Aid, done all the
Oh yeah.
programs, and we knew about the debt-free scream. It was one of those things where we thought it'd be cool to do. I don't know that we ever thought we would actually do it, but then when we ended up just moving about 40, 45 minutes away from Ramsey Solutions, we thought, hey, this is a real possibility. We don't have to fly the family, 1,000 miles. We can
Hmm.
head over there and do our debt-free screams. There we went, kids in tow, all four kids, and we got to do our debt-free scream on Ramsey Solutions, and it was a real great way for us to celebrate. It was a great memory. My son, he's 3. We practiced and practiced and practiced, but he froze when we got there. He regretted that he didn't actually say
he
it,
said,
but
he,
nonetheless, it was an awesome time.
he saw Dave looking beyond the glass and said, I can't do it. As you have transitioned now, you've owned multiple gyms, you're a fitness guy. How do you transition that into being a money fitness coach? What does that look like, that move to do that?
Well, one of the things that I just find fascinating, and I think it's obviously a benefit to really love what you do. I really just I don't it's not that I love money, it's just that I love the idea of personal development, of becoming full people and growing, and I just think it's such a really great way to help people do that. It touches on every different area. It's hard asking me to choose between fitness and finance is like asking me to choose between a favorite child. With that said, I do have a special passion for the money side. I think probably because it's made a bigger difference in our lives. It's made a difference in our marriage. It's made a difference in, like I said, our growth, all the areas. And I just find it fascinating, one, how fitness and finance are so closely aligned. I mean, there are so many parallels.
There a million examples and analogies. I love it.
There's one there's one difference that I also find really fascinating, and that is this. If you were walking down the street, Charles, I would look at you and I would say, "Here comes Charles. He must have been in the gym because he's looking jacked," right?
Yeah, look at me. I'm
Generally
yoked, baby.
you can generally see the result of physical fitness for the most part,
Mhm.
not always. With financial fitness, it's totally different, right? We all know from books like The Millionaire Next Door that wealth is something that you can't see. The guy walking down the street could have ripped clothes and messy hair and whatever else,
Yeah.
and he might have millions and millions of dollars, whereas the person driving up in the Porsche with the big house, going on the big vacations, could be highly leveraged and not doing well financially. All you really see is the money they spent, which is the opposite of wealth. I just find that fascinating as well. I love educating people on it. I love having the deep conversations that I get to have with clients about it. I love helping them use their business as a vehicle to help them develop some freedom in their lives, to help them build wealth for their families, hopefully leave a legacy. We start at square one, oftentimes maybe working out of debt, but I have clients now that's been a few years that have seen some massive improvements.
The two examples you just used is what I always couch against when I'm talking to somebody about creating time freedom. Like, you trying to do more by doing less so you can spend more time with family, friends, faith, whatever is the thing that interests you the most that you should be focusing on in with fitness, even though it wouldn't be the nicest thing to say. I can tell if somebody is or isn't fit. And even with finance, you can't necessarily tell by looking at them, but I could pull a credit score if I had to. I can check out a
Mhm.
banking account very quickly. But people can lie to others and, really worse yet, lie to themselves about how they spend their time. That's why I've always loved those two examples. In talking about fitness, so you're working with fitness pros and other entrepreneurs. How, how do you simplify the process for them and get them to focus on what really matters the most in their finances to get their best bang for their buck, or what do those first steps look like?
Yeah, a few things that come to mind. One is one of the things that helps tremendously is if we do comparative fitness, you have somebody who's maybe they're trying to lose weight and they're also
Hmm.
trying to get stronger or trying to get faster. And there's all these different things, and they're all good things, but they just lack arguably the most important component of reaching a goal, and that is focus. They're all over the place. One day they're doing this diet, the next day they're doing this program, and they're constantly dropping and hopping from one thing to the
Right.
next. I find many people doing that financially. It's like, hey, I made extra $200 on my credit card payment, and I'm saving up for my emergency fund,
Hmm.
and I'm saving up for this car, and I'm doing
Yeah.
this fill in the blank. One thing that I try to do that makes a tremendous difference, and this is not easy for people. This is why a coach comes in handy, and it's the same thing for a business coach. You could do it. You could insert any
Yep.
area, right? We do it with marketing, we do it with sales techniques, we do it with messaging. I mean, all these different things. If we were to just get laser focus, and I'm not worrying about any of this other stuff until I knock this thing out, until I master this thing. And that's one thing that is tremendously helpful for people, is just saying, hey, I'm going to stay laser focused. Where's my next dollar going?
Hmm.
It's going here. I'm clear on that. Maybe I'm doing some visualization, whatever I need to do to stay focused. That's going to be tremendously helpful. Another thing is, however we can create systems around their finances. I mean, that could be in regards to saving, investing, paying bills. In the business world, it might be allocating money for specific purposes. Maybe we want to have a continuing education bucket. Maybe we want to have a trip bucket. Maybe we want to have a tax bucket. These kinds of things that we're
Right.
creating systems so that when that time comes, we don't get in this world of chaos because we haven't planned for them. Really just helping people become planned. I usually teach the idea that if we're looking at it like a car, we want to look back, what happened behind us, what's in the rear view. That
Hmm.
might be looking at a P&L or other financial statements. On the personal side, you can look at your personal P&L, just looking at the budget that you have had perhaps, or your bank statement or credit card statement. We also want to look forward, look through that windshield and say, hey, where are we going? And that could be something as simple as this week. Hey, what's the plan this week? What's coming in this week? What's going out this week? Of course, we want to eventually project much further and say what's going on the next month, 2 months, 3 months,
Hmm.
year, or however long we want to project out. And then there are some things that we like to do to make sure that we're on track. It's great to know what happened in the past. It's great to have a plan moving forward, but back to the workouts, it's like at some level we want to track what we're doing in the present. Did we do the
Sure.
workouts? Did we do the nutrition? Did we do the sleep? Did we do the water? And what are we doing to make sure that we are staying on track? Those are a few of the things that I like to do with people to help them, because even for myself, even though I do kind of like this stuff and
Hmm.
maybe spend a little more time than most people in the numbers and that kind of thing, at the same time, we want to live our lives. We have a lot of other values and things that we want to pay attention to. The more I think that we can systematize, have a plan, have some level of accountability on these things, the better off we're going to be.
The first point you made there about focus is, man, that's a great point. I never really say it that way about money. I do about everything else, especially when you're talking about trying to budget your time, so to speak. And folks are, well, we we turn the notifications off on my phone. I don't watch the news as much, and I only check my email a couple of times, and they're kind of hopping and skipping around, and it's not laser focused. And I always use, man, I can tell you, I always use fitness as an example right there. Maybe I should be using money about that wouldn't work in the gym. I couldn't go, "Hey, well, are you do you need to get in shape?" "Yeah, well, here's what I did. I cut out carrots instead of chips, and we parked farther away in the parking lot." And they do all these little tips and tricks, and it doesn't get them anywhere. And what you're talking about with money is the exact same thing. They're not focused. They're skipping around, saving a little here, spending a little extra there, and then they take a look at the checking account and realize that it didn't pan out. And then therefore they say the whole thing doesn't work. But one thing you mentioned that they have to have systems in place. And I know I've got my own systems, but what are some of the systems that you recommend or help people set up?
Real quick, based on what you said, I had this one person who hired me, and we're looking at things, and there's a significant amount of high interest credit card debt, and that so there's a whole bunch of money that's going towards the high interest credit card debt, and then there's another bunch of money that's going out and it's being invested. The money that was going towards the high interest credit card debt was paying like 22, 23% in interest,
Yeah.
making minimum payments. The money that was going towards the investment, I think, was making
Right.
7%. No, actually, I'm sorry. It had lost 7%. It was down 7%.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, this is actually a 30% swing to
Yeah.
the negative. You will never get ahead when it comes to that. Yeah, when it comes to tools and systems, for me, it's some owners they don't have things separated, so they're commingling their business finances and their
Oh my
personal
God.
finances.
Yes.
That's more common than I like than I like to admit. Even people that are doing all right and they have, a
Yes.
bunch of revenue coming in, there are systems to do that better, to make sure that things are organized. That is going to create clarity for yourself. It's going to create clarity for those financial professionals that you're working with, perhaps a bookkeeper or a CPA.
Hmm.
They're gonna like that, and things are gonna go better. Then, of course, as I mentioned, there's the planning side. So we want to create systems for that. How are we planning? And some people, they use that B word. Which word I'm talking about? The
No.
budget, right? I try to stay away from that word, and I'll call it a plan, a spending plan, a
Sure.
financial freedom plan.
The
But making
four-letter word.
yeah, exactly. Making sure that is a system, making sure there's a system in terms of your review, looking through the rear view. Are you looking at your business owners? Are you looking at not just looking at them, but are you looking at them with an understanding? Do you understand how a P&L works? Do you understand what kind of decisions that you're going to make from I can't tell you again how many times there have been areas of a business that couldn't be profitable even with more volume just
Mm.
because they don't have an understanding of the numbers. So we want to make sure that we have some kind of system for doing that, for reviewing that, making decisions based on that. And then, like I mentioned, tracking on a weekly and monthly basis, a system for that. What are we tracking? How are we
Sure.
tracking that? Doesn't have to be complex, could be a basic spreadsheet with some of those important numbers. And we're reviewing that weekly, for example. And again, we're not just looking at it to look at it. We're looking at it to make decisions. Okay, where are we doing well? How can we double down in that area?
Right.
Where are we seeing problems, and what can we do to fix those problems? And going from there.
The the tracking, and I see so many people do this, and I've worked with one-on-one with advisors with entrepreneurs for years, and you almost have to always go to their tax returns say, hey, can you give me a year-to-date P&L? And you'll take it and
Mhm.
kind of compare it to a previous tax returns, and it's completely different. Hey, what's going on this year? Well, it's not really up to date, and we got to get it to the bookkeeper. But by the time they fix it, it always looks like this at the end of the year, like the previous tax returns, which is fine. Your taxes are getting done, but you have no clue where you're at during the year. To go back to the fitness example, it'd be like, how do you feel? How do you look? I don't know. I ain't stepped on the scale in a year, which is bananas. My wife is a bookkeeper. Anybody looking for a bookkeeper? She does her own business, and she does what you said quite a bit. She has to get checking account statements from personal, and she goes through it with a highlighter. And in some of these cases where if she's not doing a flat fee where she's doing an hourly rate, it's not great for the client at all, but they flat
Mhm.
refuse to change it. And you're talking about having systems in place, folks. I think most of the listeners do this, but man, I don't know. Separate the business and checking. And even in addition to that, personal finance wise, I don't know if Billy, you ever talk about this or recommend it. Feel free to get a couple of different checking accounts, and they can still be joint accounts. Me and Sarah do this. We have joint accounts, but we have different ones. We have one for our quarterly taxes because if we
Mhm.
don't put it there, it turns into jet ski or granite countertops. And then we also have a few different ones for our home fixed expenses. And then we have them each for our business expenses. And I'm assuming this is kind of what you're getting at when you're talking about systems.
Yeah, I actually have a few things here that I think will be really helpful. Let me touch on
Do
that
it.
first. That is a definite system that I help clients create, and that is creating separate, for lack of a better word, creating buckets for things. The way I look at things is that there's different types of expenses. One of them is one that I call random expenses. Those are the expenses that pop up less frequently than once a month. Some
Right.
examples of those might be a quarterly tax payment. It could be a quarterly insurance payment, could be an annual vacation. We go on a family
Right.
camp every July and it's a few $1,000. And where's that money coming from? Yes, what we'll do is we'll set up these holding accounts for those items, and we'll either transfer a percentage of revenue or profit or a flat amount into those accounts month over month. And what that does is it takes the chaos and the up and down and the stress out of money. That's a system for that type of expense. We also have systems for other types of expenses, whether they're monthly automatic expenses or
Hmm.
they're even just frequent spending. That's the money you're pulling out left and right to grab some coffee, get a
Yeah.
haircut, go food shopping, get some toiletries, or whatever the case is. I want to share two questions that are going to be powerful for people, and you could just answer these on your own. The first goes back to the point of focus, and that is, if I gave you $1, $100, $1,000, however much it is, what are you going to do with it? That's
Ooh.
a good question to know the answer to. If you do not, most people don't know the answer to that. They'll start floundering. Dead, savings, investments. You want to know the answer to that question, both in your business and your personal. In the business, if you have, again, the amount doesn't matter so much, 100, 1,000, 3,000, 10,000 bucks left over in your business, what are you doing with that? And then the other question is, I'll just call this a 2-minute check. I want to know, this is a yes or no. You can answer that. And I would love for somebody to share this, tag us or however you do it.
Hmm.
The question is, if I said to you, I want to know the current pulse of your business, I want to know what your cash flow is. I want to know how much revenue you're doing. I want to know your expenses, all those important numbers. Would you be able to give me that information within 2 minutes? And if the answer is no, you have what we call a red flag, and we want to create systems so that, because it's like when you don't know it, that's how you get into trouble. That's one of the things I also share is like, it's the people, like you talked about tracking and how you're coaching entrepreneurs, and tracking is so important. Peter Drucker talks about what gets measured improves.
Yeah.
Many business owners don't track. They might do it for a week here, a month here, but you have to just decide, I am going to take responsibility for this, and I am going to track what's important. I'm going to measure what's important starting now, and I'm never going to stop. If you decide to do that, you can't just do it when things look good,
Right.
because that's the easy part. Yeah, we're having a good month, so I'll look at things. It's like, no, if you do that all the time, you'll avoid a lot of the bad times.
Two questions. One, what would you do if I gave you $1,000 or 10,000, whatever number?
Mhm.
And the second one, can you tell me your financial health in less than 2 minutes? What's your revenue? What's your cash flow? You got a balance sheet. And if you can't access it within 2 minutes, then we have a problem. And I can tell you, man, for a lot of folks, that second one looks like them scrambling around to log into Bank of America and then check PayPal and then kind of review some other statements that are out there. And by the way, I'm going to freaking steal that second question because that's awesome. I asked somebody where your time goes. Yes. Can you tell me exactly how many hours you spend on email, text, phone, TV,
Good.
meetings within, I don't know, 10 minutes? They're going to probably always say no. That's anybody listening, you hear me ask you that in the future, I straight lifted that off this podcast, dude. That's an awesome question. Both of those are killer for me. $1,000, I'm afraid, would just end up right back into the savings account. My wife hates that answer. Man, those are both great questions. Look, we're getting toward the end. Well, very quickly here. Let's let's switch gears really quickly. All of this good personal financial stuff. What's a good book that you've read either recently or just that you keep going back to that you recommend in this area?
I'm gonna be that guy and rattle off like a whole bunch of books. This question is so difficult. The answer is whatever the book is that I'm reading. But I read a lot of the classic financial books like I mentioned, Millionaire Next Door, those types of books. One of my favorite books of all time is Good to Great by Jim Collins. I've read that one 7 times. And right now, I'm reading 3 books, which is not typical, or it's not always the case, but I am reading this one that I will hold up. The reason I'm reading is because like almost everybody I was talking to was giving this answer. So I'm
Yeah.
like, there's something behind that. So this book, 100
Yeah.
by Hermosi,
100 mil. Yeah. Sorry. I interrupted you with my, yes, that's $100 million leads. Also, I think he has another $100 million
offers.
offers.
Yeah,
Alex Hurt. How do you pronounce his last name?
I think it's Hermosi.
How you liking it?
It's good. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good.
Ah,
I'll just say that it's not like the best book I ever read, but it is the book I'm reading right now. This is something somebody sent me on Facebook, and I just got it printed, and because it's what I'm. This is maybe a takeaway for people, and that is I remember learning this from Brian Tracy years ago. Like, how do you choose It's kind of common sense, but we don't always follow common sense. Like, how do you choose the book to read? Yes, I get recommendations from other people, especially when those people are kind of doing what I want to do, or they've done what
Yeah.
I want to do, how have they been influenced. But it's really like the thing that's going to make the biggest difference for you, right? So if you're trying to improve in sales, you may look at a sales book, that kind of thing. But I'm really working on my newsletter. So this book is called Ultimate Guide to Six-Figure Newsletters, and it's
Huh.
actually free on. Somebody sent it to me, but I just got it printed up. That's been good. And then I am also doing more public speaking and writing. I'm reading a book called Storyworth, which is about how to tell stories in a way that engages people.
How about that? To wrap up, I always ask this question. It's a loaded question. Right now, Billy, in order to do more by doing less, what is something right now that you think you should possibly be doing less of?
I don't know if this is like taking the cheesy way out,
Uh,
but I think one of the things that would help me is is being limited by my mindset. I
okay.
think sometimes we place the biggest limitations on ourselves. Something will come up. It's something maybe I'm not super familiar or comfortable with, and I'll kind of tell myself a story like, yeah, like maybe other entrepreneurs know how to do that. They could figure this out. For me, it's just not my thing, or whatever the case is. And I feel like we know that our actions are going to be determined by our philosophy and our thoughts and our beliefs.
Hmm.
I think less of those limiting beliefs will catapult me to the next level of success. As far as a thing I'm doing with
Sure.
my time, I mean, I when I do what's called time blocking, I find myself to feel really good about things, because you can basically determine, like, did you do the thing you said you were going to do? Like, it's 12 o'clock. I told myself I was going to do the podcast with Charles. That's an
Right.
easy one, right? Because we had an appointment.
Sure.
But it's when we don't have those appointments, are we honoring what we said was most
Sure.
important? We said this was the most important. Did we do that thing? I think like over cramming the schedule is something to do less of,
Yeah.
because I am I guess like a high achiever type, kind of where I get my juice. I want to be super productive and I want to get it all done. But I find that I can get further faster and feel better about it when I'm not booking every minute.
If you spend less time dwelling on your limiting beliefs and less time cramming things in your schedule, which I love, by the way, I had a week like that where I've got way too many small items on my calendar, which is
Mhm.
not a good week. What will that let you do more of?
For one, it's more of again, I have to turn this into a woo woo kind of answer, but I think I'll just feel more content. I'll feel more at peace. I will be better for the things that matter most, which are my relationships, and that's
Hmm.
powerful to
No
me.
kidding.
There's nothing better than that. I want my wife and my kids to come home, and I want to be the best husband and dad that I can be for them.
Man, fantastic. Great interview. Lots of really good nuggets in there. A few I'm going to borrow. Billy, how can somebody find you?
Best way to find me would find me on social media. You can look for Billy Hofacker. I have a podcast called Your Fitness Money Coach Podcast. I'd love people, if you're interested, to subscribe to my newsletter. It is geared for financial improvement, helping people become financially fit in terms of business and life in general. But yeah, we go into personal development, and it is geared for gym owners, but it applies for anybody.
Dude, I appreciate it. Have a great day there in Clarks, Vegas, and I got a few questions I got to go ask people. Have a good one, bud.
Thanks, brother.
Don't take off just yet. I've created a new program just for you, helping overworked entrepreneurs create their very own 4-day work week in 90 days or less. Look, if you'd rather spend more time with family, friends, traveling, exercising, having the time to do what you want instead of, I don't know, putting out never ending fires, tackling another to do list, and checking email at 9 p.m., then go to my website, yourcharlesalexander.com. If you've created the income you want but don't have the time freedom you deserve, then this is for you. And as always, if you don't, an angel may actually lose its wings. True story. Have a great day.